We picked up our project Jeep here about a year ago as the vehicle of choice to stick in a set of 1-ton axles that we had at the shop that were originally for our Project 4Runner that never really got off the ground. Since then, I've done a ton of research and accumulated a bunch of parts to transform this Jeep into my forever rig. Something I can go out and have fun with now, but still has a lot of room to grow into as my skills improve. So what does my dream build look like? Well, you already know about the axles, but there's still a lot of work that needs to be done to those to make them worthy. That means big tires. We're going to be sticking this thing on 40s. That means suspension. We're going to be doing a 3-link suspension in the front and a 4-link suspension in the rear. That means extending the wheelbase. We're going to be pushing the rear axle back probably about 6 or 7 inches, and the front axle forward an undetermined amount. That'll be dictated by things that get in the way. That'll give us better approach and departure angles as well as overall stability. That also means better gearing. This thing's still got the manual transmission, which is a lot more difficult to drive off-road than an automatic. So any help we can get from lower gearing will be welcomed. We're going to be doing that in the form of a new transfer case. And last, we'll be doing armor. As you can see, a lot of it's already on the Jeep, and a lot of work's already been done to the Jeep, but we haven't done any updates because normally we like to finish stuff before we do an article or a video about it. And unfortunately, nothing is done on this thing yet. Everything is kind of in process. So rather than make you wait any longer for a video, we're just going to get under the thing right now, show you everything we've done so far. And then as we wrap up the individual segments of the build, we can do more detailed videos on those then. All right, so let's start by talking about the axles. As a refresher, we got Dana 60 axles out of a 1978 Ford F350, front and rear. We're still using the front axle that came out of that truck. However, we are no longer using the rear axle. Now we are running a GM 14 bolt. Turns out that Dana 60 that we had, it came with a set of chromoly axles. They were brand new, hadn't been installed. But to get them to work with that axle, I would have actually had to line bore 6 inches of the spindle on that axle to get them to fit in. They're actually too wide to fit in the hole. That's what she said. And that would have just been a pain in the ass. You can buy a tool from Yukon, I think, that does it. It's like $700. Or you can cobble together something with hole saws. I saw it on YouTube. Didn't want to mess with any of that. I was able to pick up this 14 bolt axle here for $300. It's a lot heavier duty. It's got a 10.5-inch ring gear compared to the 9.75-inch ring gear of the Dana 60. And overall, I think it's just going to be a much easier axle to use. But let's talk about the front axle first, and then we can talk more about that in a minute. So why the hell do I want to use a 45-year-old axle rather than one of the newer, more plentiful axles that come out of the newer Ford Super Duty trucks? Well, I think most people like this axle because there's a lot more room on this side of the center section than on those Super Duties. On those, the center section is moved over this way several more inches, and you actually have to cut off part of this casting so that you have enough room to weld on tabs and trusses or anything else. So it's a lot more work to get those things prepped and cleaned up so that they can be used in your application. But on this axle actually doesn't have that many tabs on it, relatively speaking, I don't think, and it wasn't bad to clean it up at all. After we got all the tabs cut off, we power washed the thing, had it sandblasted, and then I painted it all with Steel-It, which is like a weldable spray paint. So that'll make it easy and won't let it corrode before I weld on the truss, for example. Like that more than like powder coating, because if I scratch this thing up, then I can just quickly spray paint it, and powder coat just chips off and it'll end up being more of a mess and pain in the ass than it's worth, in my opinion. Still waiting for the lockers. We're doing an ARB air locker in the front. So I'm waiting on that for this, but we should have those in the next couple weeks, at which point we can get this thing all put together. This truss, this is from Artec. These provide strength to the axle to keep it from bending, but they also, more importantly, give us a place to mount our suspension links and stuff. So we'll do 3-link in the front. The mount will be probably right here, I think, as long as that doesn't interfere with the drive shaft coming through here. But that's probably where we're going to end up putting that. The only problem is this might interfere with the oil pan. I mean, we're trying to run like a 24 and a half inch height from ground to the bottom of the frame rail, and it looks like I may have like only like 3 or 4 inches of up travel before this hits the pan at that height. So I'm not sure I'm going to still use this truss. There might be something else I can do, or me trim it or cut it or do something to make it go lower, but I don't know if that'll even be enough to help. So that remains to be seen, but until now, this is the idea of what we're doing here, but we'll see. That may change. Oh, and if you remember from our vapor blasting video a few weeks ago, these are the knuckles that we cleaned up in that video. They came out really good. I got them back here to the shop, and then I spray painted these with the Steel It Gray as well, so they won't get any surface rust on them. And these will live right here. And then once I get these outers rebuilt, then I can do the steering and figure out how all that's going to work. So that is the front axle. Moving on to the rear axle. Like I said, this is a 14 bolt. It came out of a 2003 GMC Savannah van. We've got a truss for it as well. It's not welded on yet. I've got to plumb for the air locker first, so I want to do that before I permanently put this thing on here and possibly restrict my ability to get to where that stuff's at. So this is just on here now. And really we're just using this as a place to mount our suspension links here on top of this for the 4-link. So like I said, this axle's is a lot heavier and hangs down a lot lower than the Dana 60 that we were going to use, but we fixed the ground clearance problem with this thing with a shave kit that we got from TMR Customs. The way this thing works is you cut off the bottom like 2 inches of the differential here, and a lot of that's just like extra lip and stuff. And then you weld this piece onto the diff housing. And it's not as bad as people make it out to be. I mean, you are welding mild steel to this ductile iron, which can be a pain in the ass, but if you preheat the center differential well and you use like a high nickel rod, which we did here, it went on really easy. And we didn't have any cracks and came out good. So as long as it doesn't leak, we'll be in good shape. I guess now we can talk about the transfer case. All right, so this shiny new thing here is our 4-speed Atlas transfer case. This thing is going to give us 3 low range options compared to the one we have right now. Stock, this has a 2.72 to 1 low ratio. This thing's got the same 2.72 to 1. It's also got a 4.3 to 1 low ratio and a 11.69 to 1 super low ratio. So I did the math on the crawl ratio, and with 538 gears, the transmission in first gear and this in low, that'll give us a crawl ratio of like 280 to 1. Whereas in the configuration it was before, our ratio was like 45 to 1. So this is going to make it a lot easier to drive a manual transmission off-road without worrying about stalling. We did have to do some massaging to the bottom of the tub here. This little block of metal on the back of the transfer case would interfere with that. And then I also put a little more clearance here for the oil sight tube as well. Holding all this up is a skid pan from TMR Customs. Actually, it's not holding it up, it's underneath it. This is actually just bolted to the transmission right now with nothing holding it up. I do have some mounting options that I'll be playing with to see what works, just kind of universal stuff. So we'll see how that goes. I don't like the idea of all this weight hanging off the back of the transmission. This skid pan gets the belly up, I think, almost 2 inches. I'm not really sure. I'll have to put that number on the screen too. But this thing's a lot stouter than the stamped piece of shit one that the Jeep comes with. Let's take a look at the fuel tank. All right, so here we've got our 26.5 gallon Genright Tracer tank. This replaces the 31 gallon tank that we had, also from Genright. The main difference between those two tanks is this has a cutout in it here, so we'll be able to push our axle back farther, helping us get that 6 or 7 inch stretch that we're looking for. The tank itself is aluminum, but it's got this heavy duty steel plate protecting the whole thing, so even if you do come down on a rock or something, your tank's going to be fine. We did have to cut out this cross piece here. While we're under here, you can see this thing. This interferes with where the differential and the upper link mounts are going to be, so we cut that out. What we'll end up doing is welding in another cross brace here, just a piece of steel or something to make up for anything that we may have lost by not having that there, but that shouldn't be a big deal. So one of the more annoying things of doing this whole swap is cutting all the stock brackets and things off of the chassis so you have room to mount all the new stuff. So you can see all this was probably a whole full day's worth of grinding, cutting, plasma torch. I tried everything. Air hammer seemed to work really good. And then once you get all that off, you got to grind it all down. We're going to be using a 3-link and 4-link kit that you can get from, we got this from Genright, but you can get similar stuff from like Artec and other Barnes 4-wheel drive, that sort of thing. But this is a 3-link kit for the front, and then we also got a 4-link kit for the rear. It comes in just pieces, and we welded it all up together. Not going to say it went super smooth. There were some parts that didn't fit right that we had to modify, but I'll get into that probably in another video. But either way, we're going to be doing a 3-link front, 4-link rear suspension. I can't put it on the chassis right now because the lift pad's in the way, but this will just fit right over the frame rail here, and then you weld that on, and then you basically got all your link mounts done and ready to go. So pretty cool, simple, not too expensive, and an easy way to do your links. Another thing we did was a 1-inch motor mount lift here from Mountain Offroad. This thing obviously raises the engine 1 inch, which does 2 things, so at least one thing and hopefully another thing later. First, it gets the engine oil pan up another inch, so that gives us more clearance for our axle beneath it, more up travel. And what I'm hoping it will also do is move the whole drivetrain or engine and transmission up enough to where the B&M shifter we installed will actually work with the tunnel cover thing. Doesn't make a lot of sense now, but that thing doesn't work if you have a body lift and not this. So hopefully with this, it will work, but that remains to be seen, and I'll report on it once I figure it out. All right, so let's talk about body mount brackets now. These are body mount brackets from Swag Offroad. They're made of 3/16" steel, and they're actually really easy to install. All we had to do is cut off the cheap existing mounts. The Jeep, when I bought it, already had 1.5 inches or 1.25 inches body lift on it. So all I had to do was take out that puck that the existing body lift had, cut off the stock mount, put these new ones on, and then just put the factory width mount there. So that allowed me to get these whole things up another 1.25 inches out of the way. And even if they do hit rocks, these are a lot beefier than the stock ones were, so they're not going to bend and deflect like those did. We're doing a stretch on this Jeep, both front and rear, and a company called Genright makes it pretty easy to do that with what they call their tracer kit. Now that thing is like a King of the Hammers capable LJ Jeep conversion. Basically the whole thing's built. They're awesome, but we don't have the budget for that, so this is our poor man's or middle income man's version. So you can buy these different parts piecemeal, but what we got is the rear corner guard here, so this is the fender, it's completely separate, but the rear corner guard. So what that does is it moves the wheel opening back like 6 or 7 inches, and it's already cut for a 40-inch tire. So it comes right back here perfectly. It doesn't go like off the side like a comp corner or anything, which is nice. So it's a perfect fit for what we've got going on here. They're made out of aluminum. These corner guards only weigh like 16 pounds, and I think they're 3/16 or 1/4 inch thick as well. They match up perfect with these sliders. These are their mini boat side rockers. These are I got out of steel. They have them in aluminum too, but I wanted the steel because this is obviously going to take impacts a lot better than aluminum would. So these things are going to offer our tub protection, but they also give us a new wheel opening that we wouldn't have had otherwise, because we got to cut the new wheel opening back, and then we would have had the factory opening here. So these make a nice simple solution, albeit a little bit expensive solution to our body work. So this right here is the high fender from Genright with the 4-inch lip. This fender particularly requires you to cut about 3 inches off the hood line. So you can see this line here is where the hood normally comes down to. We cut all that off, and then that gives us a lot bigger opening for our 40-inch tire. And it's open all the way to the front, so it doesn't really matter how far we push the axle forwards. It also has more clearance on the back side here too. So we've also got another aluminum piece to cover this area here. Up front, we've got a steel bumper from Motobilt. This has got the, I think they call this the Crusher series bumper. It's got the full hoop around the whole hood line here. I definitely think it looks better. They have an option where you can just get this part here or none at all. But while I think this looks better, this is going to give us more protection if we ever do, God forbid, have a rollover. It's going to protect our hood and grill here and probably the radiator and other stuff as well. So I think it'll be worth it. But anyway, I wanted to get steel on this just because if it's going to be hitting stuff, while aluminum might look better and weigh less, this is going to offer us a lot more protection. So up on top here, you can see we got rid of that ugly hood scoop we mentioned in the first video. We replaced it with this nice aluminum panel from Genright. It's got a bunch of vents in it. We can look under here. That required us to cut a bunch of bigger holes under here, but that's going to allow all the heat that this engine is notorious for making vented out of here. We also have another panel to cover the rear here, pretty much just for looks to keep the continuity going around. Rear bumper, we haven't decided what we're going to do with it yet. This ugly thing needs to go, but I don't know what I want to do, and it's not mission critical to getting this Jeep on the trail, so we're going to leave it alone for now and figure it out later. For wheels and tires, we're going to be running these 40-inch Nitto trail grapplers. We actually bought these used because there was no way I could get a new set in anything short of like a year and a half. They actually have plenty of tread life left on them though, so I'm not really worried about it. These tires are known for having pretty thick sidewalls, so hopefully I'm not going to have to worry too much about puncturing these. If that's the case, then I may just leave my spare tire at camper on the trailer and not take it out with me on the trail, because that's going to save a lot of weight. I think this combination here, I think it weighed 142 pounds. So that's a heavy tire, and it's going to take up a lot of space in the back of the Jeep that I need for beer. For wheels, we're running Raceline's Monster Beadlock. I've always liked the look of these wheels. I think with the wheel and ring and hardware, they weigh like 35 pounds. So they're not super light, but they're also not that heavy considering everything you get. All the bolts are recessed in the ring here, so we don't have to worry about those hitting rocks and getting shaved down or backing out. This is a 17 by 9.5 inch wheel, and it's got a 4.5 inch back spacing here, which I think should give us enough clearance for our high steer arms in the front. That's really the main, I guess, fitment consideration you got to worry about with these. So that's our wheel and tire package. I'll probably have another video on how to mount these if you're interested in it. That was kind of cool. First time I ever mounted a wheel and tire, because most shops won't mess with these things at all anyway, and they certainly won't balance them because they're just too big. So, but I think with most modern reputable tire brands, they're pretty well made and I think balanced from the factory, so hopefully we won't have to worry too much about them being out of balance. So that's it for our update today. I should have the parts to finish the axles within the next month, hopefully, at which point I'll be able to put the trusses on, put all the brackets and stuff on the axles, locate those, build my links, get the drive shafts, that sort of thing. So things should start moving. If there's anything you want to see more detail of, particularly the stuff I glossed over in this video, do leave a message in the comments and I'll do my best to include that in upcoming videos. We have a lot of B-roll that we shot of this thing so far, just don't have any narrative to put all it together yet. So hope you liked the video. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.